Hello, guys, and a warm welcome and a warm evening to everyone. So, I am Shaikh Sarkar. I just founded this organization called POUP, which generally means Possibilities Opens Up Prosperity. And keeping that in mind, of course, we are here for a very first live session on Instagram. And this is really special for me just because we have just started this organization. And at the starting of the organization, we had a big conference which was actually educatory guideline by UNICEF. And we are very proud to be at this place to have such organizations supporting us and giving us educatory guidelines throughout our journey for that whole conference. And now today we are again sitting with some of the people, some of the guests or the speaking guests who have been in the actual conference. And today once again we are seeing them over here. And today we are going to talk about a very serious topic that both of these speakers are going to indulge us into. That is generally in general, that is actually sustainability is the key in today's world. So today we are going to just start this live event up. I will just join them up as soon as they join here, and we'll have this whole serious conversations having both of them with us together. So I think we are already having someone with us. I will just join them up.
Hi.
Hello, ma'am. Hello. Let me just join Dr. Sevita as well.
Hi.
Hello, hi, ma'am. Both of you, a very warm welcome to POUP, first of all. And it is an honor to have both of you with us together on this platform today. And truly speaking, this is our first Instagram live event on this page, and we are very fortunate to have both of you, both of these legends over here. So we would like just like to put it that like that. So thank you for joining us, first of all, ma'am. And we are just waiting for some of the people to join us so that we can just start it up. We will just wait for 1 minute, and by the time, I would just like both of you to just give us a brief introduction about yourself so that everybody comes to know. And I think it's far better to hear from your perspective than mine, because I think everybody knows themselves better than somebody else. So please, ma'am, please go on.
Savita, do you
Sure.
want to be first? Please.
Okay, I'll start.
Okay.
I'm Savita. I am currently based in Leeds. I am a postdoc researcher at Leeds University, and I do a lot of research on looking at businesses and their role towards sustainability at particularly at managerial levels, and trying to make it more effective and efficient in terms of developing frameworks for them. So that's a little bit of what I do. And previously, I have graduated from IIT Delhi, where I did my master's in technology in industrial engineering. So yeah, I can provide, I think, from my experience, a little bit of comparisons between what I've seen in a developed country and in a developing country from a sustainability perspective. So hopefully I can provide some views on that, and which is going to be helpful for the audience. Aparna, over to you.
Thanks, Savita, and thank you to you also, Shak. So, to give my introduction, I'm Aparna Banerjee, and I'm like far opposite what Savita is doing. And this is the beauty of talking with different people with different perspectives, because there is some gap between the business and the research, and I'm completely a researcher. My work has been on microbiology. I'm basically a biotechnologist. My bachelor's and master's both are in biotechnology. Then my PhD was in botany, but the work was focused in microbiology, conservation of microorganism in the extreme environment, because now in a time of climate change, the world is changing so fast that we are losing the biodiversity of plants or animals, of microbes, anything, even before knowing their identity. So even in my postdoc, I shifted to Chile, and I was doing this kind of the same work. I was doing microbial diversity related study and how they survive in the extreme ecosystem of Chile in volcanic hot water spring. And then from 2019 onwards, I started working as assistant professor in Chile. So now I am in India. The connection can be very poor, and I will be very sorry for that. If February is a vacation for us, so I just came to home last week, and this is a new life. I still think I'm an early career researcher, and there is a lot of things to learn every day. I think I learn from my students all their beautiful ideas, and today is also will be a great experience, I guess. So that's about me. But I am very vocal about conservation biology and more about microbial conservation, because we cannot see microbes and many of the times we just overlook them. But overall, I am really someone who want to talk about biodiversity, conservation, sustainability, all these factors. Yes.
Sure, that this is wonderful to have both of your experiences together. And I think Dr. Banerjee has already got the idea of what we tried to do in the last conference that we had, that we wanted to integrate both the knowledges all together. Let's see this situation as in, like, I am speaking on the perspective of an activist who is trying to change the conversation. And at the same time, both of you are here with your actual scientific knowledges, who is trying to validate our words into facts. I think that is the beauty of this particular communication or conversation, and I'm really happy that we have been able to bridge this out, the gap between this activist having some knowledges from the internet and trying to do their best to actually have a impact on the world or actually change the conversation. And now we have bridged this gap by like keeping up with all these researchers, academicians, professors from all over the world to come up and be with us and let us at least understand what we are trying to do and how is it scientifically valuable. I think with this note, I would just like to start today's session. And most importantly, both of us, three of us over here, we all actually have this in our subconscious mind that we are trying to change the world. We are trying to change the world climatically. We are trying to change the world democratically. And I think that's the beauty of being a human being. And I am really happy that I was born on this earth as a human. So let's start this particular session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I think so. Should we start now? Savita, should I start or you?
Yeah, Aparna, go ahead.
Okay. So I think I already started a little bit that I'm very far from business. But business is actually that fuel that is giving us the coins that the world is moving, and research basically is giving that idea to the business. But there have been always, I have seen there have been always that conflict between research and business, because we the researchers talks about sustainability, we talks about integration of sustainability, or like removal of the non-renewable sources from the planet earth. But then many of the times we think that the gross cost is more than what we are putting it in the research. So does it pay? I think there is the problem to make research as model to business, because probably that's where we are having the gap. And with that, I really want to hear what Sabita thinks about this, because she's more into business, and how to bridge this gap actually, like how to bridge this gap between the researchers and their idea and putting into the business, so that we can have one integrated sustainability in our planet.
Yeah, Aparna, this has been the most dominant perspective from what I have seen working with businesses, particularly their approach towards always prioritizing cost efficiency, cost effectiveness over sustainability. They tend to disregard any sustainability outcomes or benefits that might be associated with a particular decision that they make, as opposed to if it costs you less. And I think also at a consumer level, we often get tempted by the fact that something is cheaper, let's go for that option, instead of thinking whether it is even what is going to be the consequence of using this particular product, or going for that particular alternative. So which I understand, for consumers, they, it depends if whether you are privileged or not. If you are privileged, and probably you are not mindful of what really you are, uh, what you're buying, or what how you're leading your life in general, uh, it makes a huge difference. And for those people who are not, I think it's important for them to, for us to incentivize them, so that they understand that, yeah, I can see some benefit in doing this. Maybe they don't understand what climate change is, or maybe what how it's going to affect the planet. Everybody doesn't have that kind of scientific knowledge, or like that kind of education to understand the implications. But if you just incentivize them, for example, there is a new initiative in South Delhi that I recently learned about, where they are incentivizing the people who collect garbage, or collect uh, household waste, plastic, and they, if they collect enough, they can get a free meal in return of that. So I think those kind of initiatives, they actually work at that grassroots level, and we need more innovation from that perspective to see what would really change behaviors. So maybe maybe just giving them very broad agenda that, okay, we need to do net zero waste, or like um, zero carbon. Maybe not everybody understand those big hi-fi technical things, so it's good to give them the mechanisms. So that's my understanding of how it can work at a consumer level. But at business level, I think what we really need is prioritizing. Businesses still in India, they don't really prioritize sustainability. They try to greenwash. They 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 show some picture that is not really true. So, and that's where I think the role of activist is so important, where they can actually really break down that image of what companies are trying to portray, and really show the reality to the audience, to the public, who are being mostly fooled, and they are mining a lot of money from us as consumers. So I think it's their responsibility, and it's sustainable development goals talk about responsible production, responsible consumption. So I think that's a priority for every business, and which should be taken very seriously. Yeah, Aparna, what do you have to say?
Yes, actually, with this, I just remembered one thing that I probably in many of the developing countries it's still there. For example, in India, I have not seen it till now, but everybody is drinking nowadays the soft drinks like Coke, like Pepsi, this kind of things, and we are just every day we are throwing the plastics, and like in theory we have this that use the green boxes, white boxes, black boxes, but in reality that's not in use. I have seen, if for example I have seen houses where two boxes are given, so the household people they have kept one in, like they have guarded that in home, so when one will be used they will start using the another word. So that's one separate thing, but because of this incentivizing this idea, I have seen in Chile the plastic bottles for Pepsi or Coke a little costly, but then when you return this plastic bottle you get some discount in the next one. So people prefer to buy that because Coke or this kind of soft drinks are much more cheaper in American countries. I'm not aware about UK than India. So people prefer buying or drinking soft drinks there. This is just one example. Also, I have seen there even the old aged people, they are throwing their bottles, all keeping it up in one place, and then one day they go out and throw it in a big boxes somewhere near their houses where they throw it. So this is also there where the activists need to play a role in India probably, because in India we have garbage bins and there are many recyclable materials. Like when I see near my houses these days, I feel sad because in a garbage box I saw there are many materials that can be recyclable, but because all have been mixed and thrown up in a part, it's very difficult to choose one by one. and then the entire recycling process gets difficult. In Chile, in my city, it's not the capital city, but even in my city there is a plant that is recyclable, and everywhere in the city it is clearly detected or written down which are the materials in the regular livelihood that we are using is completely recyclable, partially recyclable, and non-recyclable. So people all the time is seeing this, okay, so this is that, and they have an idea, so this is the thing I should throw there, and this is the thing that is of no use, so I will just throw it in a garbage in a separate bag. So I think that kind of thing is really needed, that the government is making some campaign or the activists are making some campaign, because we have limited resource, and plastic is definitely not the resource. If we are going to use some renewable resource, it costly, and that's the fact why we need to use the renewable resource. But if there is no stringent management or a strong management plan in behind, so it will be costly. I think even I saw in Chile that there are bamboo toothbrush, but I have seen many people not buying bamboo toothbrush. Many people, even the researchers, probably will not prefer, because one day I was discussing with Savita about this, that I heard from someone a very very small point, that bamboo toothbrush becomes wet after we brush it, and it looks a little dirty, something like that, that the plastic toothbrush doesn't look. So there should be some plan or some coating with biomaterials, that I know that there is possibility of coating the bamboo things with some polymeric biomaterials. So we need to think how to make the sustainable goods more attractive, and that the researchers need to work, so that there is a little difficulty of using jute bag because its strength. So to increase the tensile strength, probably we need to make it a polymeric complex, so that it will be more durable. So there are a lot of gaps that probably we also need to bridge, so that we can give a better benefit to the business people, and it will be cost effective. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Just a small note to what ma'am said, that in India, like as you just say that there are two like different particular dustbins for biodegradable and non-biodegradable materials or the wastes, but people tend to just look at it as these are two dustbins. We can make use of two dustbins. So, like as you were telling that here where the activists should come up and do their work. So, like from my own experience, what we have been experiencing for the last month, I would say that they would perform such activities when we are nearby. But as soon as we are out of the scene, they will again start doing the same thing. So I think this is the actual thing that we have to take care of, that we should educate them about this particular thing. I think people will say, okay, there is CBSE board. I think everybody is aware of that. That is a central board in India. And there is a particular book that is NCERT that has all this science and maths and all the other languages as well. So there we have this, because I have studied from CBSE board, and I know that there has been these kind of educations over there. But as again coming to Dr. Sevita as well, that it has not been prioritized. It has just given as a fact to read, not to understand. I think there should be also these kind of scientific experiments in school, as we used to do about some other kind of scientific like experiments in the school, like chalk dust and water mixing up, and what is the result of it? Is it a translucent solution or is it a transparent solution? We should also make this a scientific activity in school, that if we just arrange around 10 particular wastes and let the students identify which is non-biodegradable and which is biodegradable, and let them put it into that particular color dustbin. I think this is the foundation which we have to build up. We have to have a strong foundation for the upcoming children, so that they can at least understand what this is, and by doing this, what is the impact that we are leaving on earth. Again,
Exactly.
coming back to you, ma'am.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. I think we as Indians, I want to give some credit to how we have been brought up as well. It's not that we don't understand recycling and using resources wisely. I think that has been at the core of our upbringing, because we have always been told that switch off the lights when you're not using them, or like we used to keep using the same clothes again and again until they go really, they are battered completely. So I think those are the kind of knowledge that we have been raised with. But I, it, what now the generation today doesn't understand is because they are born into privileges, and they are born, parents try to give every possible thing that they possibly don't even need. And they don't realize like what is going to be the impact of how it's going to be landfilled, or like where is it going to go. Just give them plenty of toys. I'm just giving an example, but I think lot of it has changed over the years. We were not so privileged in terms of when we were raised, as compared to kids today, irrespective of the socioeconomic background. Parents want to provide everything. So that's something that we need to inculcate in today's generation, that it's not it's not just there for you to exploit whatever we have today, that it's something that we need to use mindfully. Probably we were not so mindful when we were using them, but I think it's so urgent for us to change it so drastically, for us to survive over the next decades. So that is like a conscious change that we need to make in our education system, that there are real implications of how we lead our lives, and at very basic levels. For example, you said how we can have experiments in schools about what is a better option to go for. Also, everybody is playing their part, be it businesses or be it households or the government. And government really need to accelerate this. For example, now in the new budget 2021, the financial budget, the government has increased the duties on the solar panels, solar lanterns, and at the same time they want to encourage businesses to make in India. But isn't it ironic that on one hand you are increasing these duties, and on the other hand you want to encourage businesses to buy from your own country? So I think that's where things fail, because it has to go hand in hand. If you're trying to achieve something, it has to add up. So yeah, that's the sad part, that we don't realize what we are trying to achieve, and are we really facilitating that. So yeah, if there's something that we could do about it, we can always like give frameworks, but if they're not used effectively or implemented, then what's the point?
But in that part of
Absolutely, ma'am. I absolutely agree with you. And I think Dr. Banerjee will agree with me that in a part of India, I think everybody is aware of that. Me and ma'am both belongs to a part called West Bengal. So that's a state there. And right there, our chief minister, who has been ruling there for the last 15 years, I think now. So she she brought up a initiative that was called Shobut Shathi, that actually means a kind of green companion. And right there, she was about to bring something where these commercial spaces, the new commercial spaces, which are actually being planned or which are actually being mutated, she wanted all these commercial spaces, whatever whatever the whole building, let it be a 10-floor building, let it be a 1-floor building, whatever the total space they're using in square meters, they have to have 33% of greenery in it. The total area, 33% of it has to be greenery. But I think it just was there in the scripts, not in the real life, because I have seen many commercial buildings built up in my time while I was there. Now I'm in Delhi. But at the time I was there, I have never seen any of the buildings which were at least near me, which I have seen from the foundation to a proper building, has actually maintained that. So I think, as you were telling, that we are giving them the resources, but we also need to check upon that whether they are actually utilizing those concepts which these researchers are building up by like not sleeping at night and by investing their whole times on it. And we really need to get conscious about this, because we think that these are small concepts that just somehow anyhow are clicked in some scientist's mind and they have just put it on. No, it's not. It has been gone through very tired journey of that, those scientists working together day and night to bring up those concepts, and actually what to say, actually validating through the proofs that they have actually experienced through the experiments they have done. So I think we really need to like give a proper or prioritized like view on this, that whether these concepts are actually getting into work. And I think this is also a sad part of the story in India, because India has always been a country which has always been first in giving innovations, new ideas, new concepts, but at the time of implementation, it's average. It doesn't actually
Exactly.
have those implementational qualities in it. Over to ma'am.
Yeah.
Actually, that's not only the problem of India, that's the problem of many developing country, I think. Even if we talk about Bangladesh, we talk about Pakistan, there have been good research in India. We cannot say like India is properly one developing country like Pakistan or Bangladesh or some in Africa, but in countries that are not privileged like United States of America or United Kingdom or some other countries, but there is always that gap that we provide them the innovation, but then there is the lack of implementation. Why that? Because the people who are doing the implementation, there is lack of people educated over there, and the educated people never want to achieve that position because they know that it's very difficult over there to survive. It's better to stay in this side, and both of the side of the boat, people think we are unhappy in this side and we never want to go to the other side also, but we just that's the gap, because the people who are making the implementation, they don't understand science, and that's the problem. I and then one thing in India, for example, in India, they all the implementations, the good rules that have been done, but everyone is not privileged. For example, in India there is a concept that we call made buys, like in India, that the people who works, it's
Mm.
not that much, the concept is not that much there in Western world. It's very difficult to make them understand sustainability, because they or the people who are washing clothes, they or the people who are farmers, and every year they are not understanding a strategic farming, and what they are doing is putting fire in the big land. I was just asking, it's just a fact of 7 days before I was coming from Kolkata airport directly to Asansol, and I was seeing that there is forest fire. There is like land fire in a part near Shingur. Probably you know, Shrav. And it's very awkward because never in my life I have seen forest fire, like putting fire in West Bengal. I have never seen it. This is a very typical culture of another part of India. But we are taking which is easy. We are taking, and the driver of with whom we were coming, he told, "This is a new thing that has started, madam. It's like people think, we have a big trash, let's just put fire and it will be gone in a moment." So in a moment we are doing pollution, and moreover that all the fertilizer that we put got zero in a moment. The fertile land become infertile, then again next year we will buy fertilizer, and they don't understand even utilizing biofertilizers. So that's the problem, implementation, because people are not privileged and people are not educated. We are, it's true that we are not that privileged and we don't have the mindset of conservation. And if you talk about conservation, probably people will say, you are too much educated and you are saying these things. In my life I have seen this. When I talk about conservation, my family, my relatives, they say me, or my friends, they say me, you are too much educated, like, will do whatever you want to do. So there is always that gap, to bridge.
Just to add on this, ma'am, in India, or if you talk about West Bengal or Kolkata or Bengali culture, if we say about like all this kind of things like conservation, how to use like efficient resources, it is also a sign of sophistication for them, that, oh, you are being too sophisticated.
Also, we
Yeah.
don't know any straightforward way, Sabita, isn't it? Like how to reach that goal. Um, what to do? There have been so many loopholes to reach sustainability. So what is that straight road to reach sustainability?
There
That's
is
the
no straight road. Well, I know it's not so easy. Uh, but I think we really need to uh, catch the big players as well, those who are having a huge contribution and those who are actually exploiting the most. So I think we should at least start from there. Let's not turn a blind eye to them. And I think also we need to really support our researchers as well. In India, we are not so supported in terms of uh, funding that's there for researchers to work on these innovative projects. I think here what's different is in the UK, at least from my experience, businesses really work hand in hand with researchers, and they really support you, and they really listen to your feedback, what you as a researcher have to say, and how we can improve our processes. But that doesn't exist in India. In India, nobody, like those organizations, those big organizations, they don't really, I think, uh, take advice from the researchers, or implement their suggestions, their solutions that they have produced. So I think that's the gap. Researchers are working in, like, in segregation to the businesses. So that's something that we could try to bridge in India as well, and that's going to, like, I think, do wonders for businesses, and for us to, like, improve the overall impact. But yeah, there are multiple things that needs to be done at the ground level as well, starting from awareness. That's the biggest, I think, step that we can take towards that direction, that farmers and even the households, they need to be made aware of how you can like take better steps to dispose maybe the waste, not like just setting it on fire and like degrading the air quality. So I think those kind of issues, they need to be really addressed.
Absolutely, ma'am. Absolutely. And as you said that there was these researchers in India are not that much supported as the businessmen's. But I think in India, like not just about conservation or not just talking about climate, also talking about business, the businessmen in India, which you see, the millionaires, the billionaires. There is, I think, last time I read an article, there were 132 billionaires in India. So keeping all these things in mind, those businessmen are also not even educated about business. So
Yeah.
then how can they even understand that how it is important to actually consult an environmentalist or actually consult a research team to actually quantify their product, whether it is eco-friendly or not, and what are the effects if it will be doing after it is into the market and people are using it. There is, and that is the reason there has been numerous number of cases of products, let it be cosmetics, let it be
Mm.
some kind of like food manufacturing companies, which has come to an end in India just because of their non-suggestive like mindset, that they are not taking suggestions from the researchers and they are just releasing out the like the quantities there of the products that they are like manufacturing or publishing. I think they really need to get that education from the foundation. But again, coming back to the the stereotypes that India has the best education. So I don't know how does that comes into the fact when these kind of like disputes we can see in grown-up mans. Then how can we even say that the best education is in India? Over to you, ma'am.
to this to this point about cosmeceutics, I just remember one thing. In India, in cosmeceuticals, probably I'm using the term cosmeceuticals because many times they proclaim that the cosmetics have pharmaceuticals properties, but then if you see in the back, you will see the antioxidants are chemically synthesized antioxidants, the carrot extract or lemon extract that they are saying, lemon flavor, artificial flavor number, this. So there is the gap, because here we can buy one probably one cream that a people can get, the common general people, not more than probably 2 USD. How much 2 USD in now in Indian money? 150 rupees. So I think
Mm.
the same situation is in Africa. The same situation is probably in some part of the Middle East, some part of the Southeast Asia, the some part of even Latin America, the top part of Latin America. So in some part of the world, we are having one eye wash, we are having one gimmick, because sometimes the natural product is again so costly that we are not getting it. But I have seen many products in Chile, because in Chile it's more international and we get many different products from different countries. And because now I was not privileged 20 years back, but as you both were saying, more Sabita was saying about this, that we got this idea from our parents to be like because you have limited resource, take care of it. But as suddenly the generation see one change in 2000 and the resource suddenly got exceeded a little more, still now less than America or United Kingdom or Europe, but that change has been very trivial, that the kids started thinking we are getting whatever we want, but then suddenly our resources, monetary resources, are not that compared to the other countries. So again, that the sustainability is not paying that much that we can afford it. But then we have good scientists who are every day working in sustainable research, sustainable natural compounds to integrate in food industry or pharmaceuticals or cosmeceuticals or wastewater treatment. But yes, this is the problem, I think, why some model works in developed countries and some just don't work in the developing countries or the underprivileged countries. Because we have many resources less and many resources too much, and there is definitely no balance on that.
Absolutely, ma'am. And I would just like to raise a point over here. So, for the last month, we have been working on a project called the Plant Your Future campaign. Dr. Banerjee is already aware of that. So, what here we are doing on a physical basis is that we are going to every resident in our like NCR, that is the Noida sector of Delhi, where we are trying to collect up plastic bottles, and on behalf of that, we are giving them a plant sapling. And most importantly, we are prioritizing some kind of a plant sapling which can give them benefits as well, like lemons, or you can talk it as carrots or cabbages or some things like that, like chili, and then brinjal and all these kind of things, which can also give them advantages, because if we give them some ornamental plants, they might just leave it somewhere and then forget about that. So in between that, we came across an organization called Kawariwala, which actually makes eco bricks. I hope both of you are aware of this terminology, eco bricks, that is ecological brick, where they're trying to take this non-biodegradable particles like plastic bottles or oil bottles, and then they're filling it up with scrap plastics and making it so intact, and then using it as a brick with cement. And as it is saying that it is far more efficient than actual mud brick, a burnt mud brick. But of course, we cannot make stories out of it. We cannot use it for building buildings, but we can use it for some other kind of, if we talk about some kind of a structure like a bench, a cement bench, or if you talk about a seating area, we can make it, and it's absolutely efficient. So while doing this thing, we have come across a lot of houses who are asking us that why are you taking these bottles and what are you going to do with this? So when we explain them this whole theory of eco brick or ecological brick, they took our numbers, phone numbers, to ask them that what we have been doing afterwards and stuff. And we were very happy at that time that, wow, this is really good that they are actually getting aware and they are trying to follow, like keep a follow up that what we are trying to do, and they might clone us as well. So we were like, that's absolutely going into the direction what we wanted this organization to grow. But after some time, we came to know that they have been searching about ecological break, and they have come out with this absurd idea that this is something, a political agenda, which this present political group is trying to do to kill the businesses of this mud brick makers, or these kind of burnt brick makers. So this was an horrific situation for us to face, and we were like, what to do in this situation, whom to talk to, whom to take suggestions from, how to actually make them believe that this is not at all a political agenda, and how you do even feel about this. So I think coming down to the moral of this whole situation, that in India, it's not just about education, it's also about intention. What these people are intended when they are giving us this particular support by giving us 5 bottles and without taking any charges from them. So I think they also need to understand the intentions of organizations or activists or even government while they are doing something towards the betterment of the climate or towards the betterment of a better future. I think there is a lot of improvement needed, at least in India. And as you were talking about the African countries as well, we are also working in Uganda. And there we have seen a very beautiful, like a collision between their culture and their conservativeness, or at least they call it conservativeness. But at the same time, if we like terminalize it into the scientific sector, it becomes conservation. Let me tell you just a small story. There are these women who actually, like, I think Dr. Banerjee is also aware of this. In Bengal, we actually kind of, not only in Bengal, in all the parts of India, I think, we actually kind of like worship plants. Some of the plants we worship, right?
Mm.
So this tradition is also there in Africa, especially Uganda, where they worship plants. And that is the reason they never cut those plants, at least those species of plants. And I think that for now is a big thing because they are still maintaining that worshipping mentality of them and they're not cutting those plants. But in India, I think, as you were mentioning, after this 2000, there has been a new change in the generations, in growth, and they're getting into some kind of inspiration from the Western world and trying to manipulate their own cultures. And it is a mixture, and it is not a good mixture. It is a very bad mixture where they were once worshipping some plants, and at the same time now they're trying to do something to help themselves by cutting those trees, making a factory out of it, or maybe selling those trees out. And I think this mixture is not going to really sustain the word called conservation in India. I think they really need to get some simpler way of maintaining their culture. And again, coming back that people will again, like, I think there might be some comments on this live session as well, because I have faced these kind of comments earlier as well, that people will say, you are actually being so misogynist about this. Why are you trying to be a person who is trying to like restrict somebody to their only culture? They can go and explore other cultures. I am not saying that. I'm just trying to say that if you have a culture, maintain that. And if that culture is anyhow helping today's world scientifically, or at least from the point of view of a climate change or a climate change activism mentality, do that. I don't think there is any problem or any wrong thing to be identified in that cultural practices, or even religious practices. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there is a shift in terms of how Western countries have always exploited a lot of resources in terms of they use these third world countries to dump their waste, and people don't realize it. And you know what? Now there is this enlightenment that okay, that's unfair, and there are activist groups. They are like bring this to the light of public. But yeah, now there's a shift that Western countries and the citizens here, they are going towards this minimalist lifestyle, while India always being late at the bandwagon and always trying to copy what has been very fancy in the West. In India, I have seen this trend of maximalism, like people are trying to like just just acquire everything that they can. And I think minimalism will reach there later, or I don't know. And we have from our childhood, we have had this minimalist kind of theory that our parents raised us with. So I think it really messes up with how today's generation thinks, and uh, something that we can like really try to change in terms of no, let's stick to what we have been raised with. That's the good way of going about it. We already have a lot of wisdom in our country, and we should really use it going forward, and not just copy and try to emulate what other people are doing. Yeah.
because they are not even copying us, they're not even copying someone else. So
No.
like I think we should actually get this idea clear that it's not a give and take policy that we are copying them, they are copying us. No, this is just a one way flow.
Yeah.
We are copying them, they are in their own thing. As you say, that stick to your own point and stick to your own upbringing, they are
Yeah.
sticking to their own upbringing. But we have somehow got into this whole like generation, and we have also grown up with this idea from our like friends or families that we have to do a maximum, like as you say, that maximization is in our blood now, that we want to get everything, we want to achieve everything. But I think eventually they will come to understand, at least in their 90s or 80s of their life, that it's somehow or the other not possible to get everything you want.
True.
Over to you, ma'am.
I think about this minimalism, I feel that the things maybe are changing even a little, because in our generation there are also a group of people who are concerned about the factor environment, a group of people who are activists. Even it's not needed to be an activist. People who are just concerned about the ecosystem and environment. I will just give a small example this time. I was back in my home after 1 year, and my mom told, let me tell you two big points that I am still following that you told me. I have the idea now that the pump take 10 minutes to get full, so I just wait 10 minutes, I go and I put it off so that the water don't get wasted. And I remember there was a time when every day in my home 2 to 3 minutes the water used to fall, because we were not able to calculate how much time it every day takes make it full. So I used to tell them, do you understand that in Africa people don't have water? And I see it in many houses people do that. Because you know what is the problem in India, why people waste water or why people waste natural resources? Because here the things are not privatized. In Chile water is private, the only country in the world, Chile, where water is private, and people pay for water, so they cannot deplete the resource because they know they have to pay for it. So but I'm seeing that people nowadays have this idea. I last year I came back here and I heard many people of my parents generation had talked to me. You see, in South India the water level have got so down that they will not have, they don't have water this year, the next 5 years they will not have water. So they are scared because the news channels here are showing the entire scenario in a scary way. But it's good that the people is understanding that the the resource that we have, it's getting depleted. And to maintain one ecological balance, like Sabita told, I super like this idea, that this word minimalism. I think this is the best way we can reach sustainability, being minimal. Yes.
Mhm.
Again, coming back to your point, ma'am, about this minimalism and maximalism, that in India, people are so aware of other technological advancements or scientific advancements or inventions. Like yesterday, I was just talking to a local Delhi guy who is into business and he's doing his life, he's great in his life. So he was telling me about that he has got so many information about cryopreservation. I was like, where did you got this sound from? This is not initiated from India. Where did you got this sound from? So he said that I have read about it. I have gone through the internet. I have read about it. I've like gained knowledge about it. So then I was thinking, in after I met him, that he has this ability to actually adopt those kind of informations from internet and taking those kind of informations and actually thinking about it, that how this cryopreservation can help in like upcoming researches, or how this can even help in preserving a human for more than 10 or 20 years. So I was like, okay, so that's cool that you have really gone to the depth of this whole research theory. But why aren't they going to these kind of like inventions that are being actually happening in day-to-day world of ours? Like I think some days before, somebody, I don't remember the scientist's name, but somebody invented an edible spoon, which can, after using the spoon, we can actually eat the spoon itself. So these kind of inventions gets like somehow like unnoticed, or these inventions somehow get like unrecognized as a big invention than a person who is inventing something in NASA, or like creating a big atmosphere of we have introduced or invented a new planet or a new star. Okay, that's absolutely important to actually know about our universe. But at the same time, I think it's also more necessary, or we should give it more priority, that what is happening on this earth, at least first save your own planet and then go for the others.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
this is more necessary.
the reason for this kind of uh, failure of these innovative ideas is because those big players in the market who actually sell plastic spoons, they have operationalized it, and they have the means to like sell it, push their product to the grassroots level. You can see how Pepsi, like those players, Pepsi, Coke, they have reached. You can get a Pepsi in the deepest, like in the darkest of the village, but at the same time an organic product you might not find it. So I think they have really ruined it in terms of just pushing those products that are harmful for the environment to that level. And what we really need is government interventions to support these local, be it farmers or people who are innovating such incredible stuff, to be mass produced and uh, to, to be able to like provide them to in the supermarkets, like you said, bamboo toothbrushes. So I think it's kind of those really interventions that we need from the government side and from the businesses side to be able to use it. But I know there are everybody's hidden interests and economic gains that stop us from doing it. So yeah, I don't know what we can do about it, but we really need to be serious about this.
I think this was a very interesting information that we got from you, Dr. Sevita, about this. Like the, as you say, that the plastic spoon manufacturing farms are really suppressing these kind of organic or eco-friendly products that are being made. And I think there are a lot of companies. It's not just one company. There are a lot of companies who are really working together to actually bring up these kind of eco-friendly products into play. But I think it's not India, it's about the whole world.
Yeah.
Somehow or the other, it's not about government also, because the government cannot do everything that to actually kind of, because we cannot categorize conservation or efficient resource use into a non-government kind of space. We have to put it into a like a generalized space, that it's not the only the duty of a non-government organization to do so. Even the government can help or at least contribute to the whole motion. And I think at this same point, again coming back to the what I was saying, that like taking this whole both of their contributions, it can make a change. But it also, as you say, that there is a bigger factor like economic strength and how much these countries are in the whole economic list of the world, that who is into the fourth stage and who is into the fifth stage. So these kind of factors will again come down for the government, that we cannot be the fifth one, but we can be the fourth one just by violating one of these kind of small issues that are not being aware to the people about using an ecological or eco-friendly product. So this is a big problem that we three cannot just sit and talk and solve. It has to be into the masses, and then only we can even expect something or a very small step to be covered if it at least reaches 10,000 people. And then again coming back to the same point and again restarting from the scratch and like reaching more and more bigger audiences. So I think this idea is getting very clear to us, that it's not just that this whole sustainability is only based on one factor, awareness. No, it's not just one factor. It is several factors, and I think there are even sub factors which are involved. And these all factors cannot even be even I don't think, according to my belief, this is impossible for any organization or even a group of organization to work through. I think, as you always mention like this, that the big players has to come and act and has to really profound their own interventions into this, and then I think at least some can be done. And I think some of the initiatives I really applaud, like Bill Gates Foundation, Obama Foundation, which is really trying to work. I think at least work, because I would say the other organizations don't even work. But Bill Gates Foundation or the Obama Foundation is really working. And I've seen their growth from like the scratch. At least Obama Foundation I've seen as like Michelle Obama is also working over there in their foundation, and she's really trying to do something for the world. And let's see. I don't know where this the conversation is going, but let's
Yeah.
see where it actually ends up. Yes, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
I think, yeah, I mean, you're right. These foundations, they are great, and every country is trying to do something to play their part. And even in India, there are policies being made from time to time. There was a policy recently that not so recent anymore, but yeah, 2% of any company's profit should go towards CSR. But you know what? Even that doesn't happen in India. Even that 2% is not fully implemented, and so I think that's the problem. So firstly, it doesn't have to be 2%; it has to be way more, and then you have to really do something about it. You can't really, uh, as I said, greenwash or pay a lip service to it. So that's something that we really need to change going forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. Over to you, ma'am. What do you have to say as a conclusion statement of this whole communication? What we actually can do, and how can we inspire people to actually follow those footsteps that our great leaders have like left us for?
I think I have already told the conclusion that in the last time when I was talking. I really like that idea. I was like sometimes I just run out of the words, but this word of minimalism was so beautiful. I guess that kind of make a nutshell of everything, because everyone is somehow want to achieve things, want to accumulate things, and everyone, if they can be. I remember when I was a kid, I only had two toys, and I know some kids nowadays who probably have 2000 toys, and then they resell it in Facebook marketplace, and this goes on. And this is funny because many of the toys I feel is not needed. If we, being a parent, for example, if we become someday and we buy them toys, plastic toys, from the very low quality plastic toys, so what is the meaning that we are educated and we are doing the same? So I think it's important, like our parents used to say, be, we don't have much money, so be fine with whatever we are providing you, because that's the thing we can provide you the best. So I think that time minimalism was obligatory. Now we have to make it obligatory, but we have to have the intention of minimalism. I think that's the way to reach sustainability. Yes, yes.
Absolutely, and I think we came up with this beautiful idea from Dr. Sevita about this minimalism, and I think we should really give a second thought to this and really understand what its whole theory is all about. And we'll of course have a connection with Dr. Sevita so that she can give us more information about this whole concept, and we will try to inspire people to take this whole concept into their mind. And at least if you can't, if they can't even like give it the whole 100%, but at least try your first 10%, and let's see what happens in the next time. So thank you both of you for joining us today, and I think we have really gathered up a lot of information over here. And whoever is watching us, this is a plea from our organization and all of these people who are trying to give us a better world tomorrow, that please follow some simple rules, or at least I would like to tell it as ethics. Just create or get some ethics that we are trying to get everything, all the resources from this earth, but also try to give some back to the earth. Try to be a bit gentle with the earth as you are gentle with your loved ones. Try to actually love the earth and really enjoy what your environment is saying to you. And that's it. And I think that can actually lead up this small ethics. If you can really build up in your own mentality or own personality, I think that can go a far way more than if you just like drop a plastic bottle into a machine. And thank you both of you again, once again, to join us today. And it has been a pleasure once again for the organization to have you both with us. And we have got something out of this live session, and I think we will actually reach these messages out to the people or the audience watching us. Thank you, Dr. Sevita. Thank you, Dr. Banerjee, for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure
Alright.
talking to you.
Thank you. Yes, for me too. It was a
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. And everybody, all the audiences, we will see you the next time. Bye-bye and have a nice day.
Bye.